A woman like you is not qualified to lead. Grayson Wells sneers, his voice dripping with contempt in the Apex Aerospace boardroom. Apex needs a real leader, not a CEO who's just a hired gun. Tensions rise as Zora Hamilton, the black CEO, confronts her betrayers, Grayson and her stepmother, Claudia, the saboteurs who have threatened her father's $12 billion empire. With evidence about to shatter their plot, Zora's next move will determine the fate of Apex. Will she expose their betrayal and protect her legacy, or will ambition tear it all apart? Immerse yourself in this gripping tale of trust and triumph and uncover secrets that will keep you guessing. Do you like epic stories like this? Subscribe to our channel for the latest exciting videos and leave a comment sharing where you're watching. Who is behind the vandalism and what is their real motive? Follow us to find out. The Houston sun blazed mercilessly, a relentless orb that turned the tarmac of Apex Aerospace's private hangar into a shimmering mirage. Inside the sleek, glass-walled conference room of the company's headquarters, Zora Hamilton stood like a sentinel, her dark eyes scanning a tablet that buzzed with urgent notifications. At 38, Zora was a vision of poised authority, her tailored navy blazer accentuating her tall frame, her coiled hair swept into an elegant updo. As the black CEO of Apex Aerospace, a $12 billion empire built by her late father, Dr. Isaiah Hamilton, she carried the weight of a legacy that was both her pride and her burden. 5 years ago, Isaiah's sudden death had thrust her into the helm, and every decision since had been a battle to prove she was more than a figurehead, more than the diversity hire whispered behind boardroom doors. Her stepmother, Claudia, lingered at the room's edge, her crimson lipstick a stark contrast to her pale, angular face. Claudia's minority stake in Apex gave her a seat at the table, but her eyes gleamed with something sharper than loyalty, a hunger for control that Zora felt like a cold blade against her spine. "Zora, darling," Claudia purred, her voice dripping with false warmth. "You look tense. Another contract keeping you up at night?" Zora's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. Claudia's taunts were as predictable as the Texas heat, and today Zora had no time for games. Her phone vibrated, cutting through the tension. An email from HR flashed across the screen. "New hire, Julian Carter, 43, white male, 15 years as an aircraft mechanic, ex-Navy, starts today." Zora's brow furrowed. A seasoned mechanic was a coup for Apex's maintenance team, but she hadn't been involved in the hiring. Odd, she thought, filing it away as her assistant, Marla, burst through the door, her face flushed with panic. "Ms. Hamilton, it's the Stratahawk," Marla said, breathless. "It's grounded. Propulsion system failure. The engineers can't pinpoint it, and your flight to Tokyo is in 2 hours." Zora's heart lurched. The Stratahawk, Apex's $90 million hypersonic jet, was the cornerstone of their bid for a $2 billion contract with a Japanese consortium. Missing this meeting wasn't an option. It could unravel months of negotiations and tarnish Apex's reputation. Claudia's lips curled into a faint predatory smile, as if savoring the chaos. "Oh dear," she murmured. "What a pity." Zora strode out, her heels clicking with purpose, Marla trailing behind. The hangar was a hive of frenetic activity, technicians swarming the Stratahawk like ants on a wounded beast. The jet's sleek, silver fuselage gleamed under the hangar lights, but its silence was deafening. No hum of engines, no pulse of power. Lead engineer Dr. Patel, a wiry man with sweat-soaked glasses, threw up his hands as Zora approached. "We've run every diagnostic," he said, voice fraying. "The system reads normal, but the propulsion won't engage. It's like the damn thing's possessed." Zora's mind raced, calculating the stakes. The Japanese deal was her father's dream made real, a leap toward accessible space travel. Failure now would embolden Claudia's allies on the board, who questioned Zora's youth and inexperience. She scanned the hangar, her gaze landing on a man standing apart from the chaos. He was in his early 40s, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face and pale blue eyes that held a quiet intensity. His navy coveralls bore the Apex logo, still crisp with newness. Julian Carter, the new hire, realized. He stepped forward, unfazed by the pandemonium. "Ms. Hamilton," he said, his voice steady, carrying the clipped precision of military training, I've seen symptoms like this in Navy jets. It's likely a misalignment in the turbine's thermal regulator. I can check it, but I'll need access to the core. His confidence was disarming, almost audacious. Yet there was no arrogance in his tone, just the calm of a man who'd faced worse under pressure. Zora hesitated. Trusting an untested mechanic with a $90 million prototype was a gamble, but time was bleeding away. Claudia's voice echoed in her mind. Youth lacks gravitas. She pushed it aside. You have 1 hour, Mr. Carter, she said, her tone firm but laced with a challenge. Don't make me regret this. Julian nodded, already moving toward the jet. He hauled a toolbox with the ease of long practice, his movements deliberate, almost reverent, as if the machine were an old friend. The other technicians parted, some skeptical, others relieved to defer to someone willing to take the risk. Zora watched, arms crossed, as Julian climbed a scaffold to access the Stratohawk's propulsion core. The Texas sun streamed through the hangar's open doors, bathing him in a harsh glow. Sweat beaded on his brow, but his hands were steady, wielding tools with the precision of a surgeon. Minutes ticked by, each one a hammer blow to Zora's composure. She glanced at her watch, 45 minutes until her flight window closed. Marla hovered nearby, whispering updates from the Tokyo team, their impatience growing. Claudia had followed them to the hangar, her presence a silent taunt. Perhaps we should call in an external consultant, she suggested, her voice syrupy. This seems beyond our current capabilities. Zora ignored her, her focus locked on Julian. Inside the jet's core, Julian's flashlight illuminated a maze of titanium and carbon fiber. His fingers traced the thermal regulator, a critical component that balanced the engine's blistering heat. There, he spotted it. A microscopic fracture in the regulator's casing, invisible to standard diagnostics, is disrupting the fuel flow. It was a devilish flaw, the kind that could ground a jet for days if missed. He radioed for a specialized sealant and a replacement microvalve, his voice calm but urgent. I can fix this in 20 minutes if the parts are here. Dr. Patel scrambled to retrieve the components, while Julian worked to stabilize the regulator. His hands moved with a dancer's grace, threading tools into spaces no machine could navigate. Zora watched, her skepticism giving way to fascination. This wasn't just skill, it was artistry, born of years in hangars and war zones, where a single error could cost lives. With 15 minutes to spare, Julian emerged, wiping sweat from his forehead. Try it now, he called to the control team. A technician hesitated, then engaged the ignition sequence. The Stratohawk's engines whined, then roared, a deep, harmonious thunder that shook the hangar floor. Diagnostics flashed green across the monitors. The jet was alive. Zora exhaled, relief flooding her. The technicians erupted in cheers, but Julian simply packed his tools, his expression unchanged, as if saving a $90 million deal was just another day's work. Dr. Patel clapped him on the shoulder, muttering, Damn fine job. Claudia's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing as she reassessed the man she'd barely noticed. Zora approached Julian, her heart still pounding from the close call. That was remarkable, Mr. Carter, she said, her voice steady but warm. She reached into her blazer, producing an embossed business card, its gold lettering catching the light. Apex could use talent like yours in more than just the hangar. Call my office. Let's talk about your future. Her gaze held his for a moment, searching for the spark she glimpsed in his quiet resolve. There was something there, potential perhaps, or a shared defiance of the odds. Julian took the card, his calloused fingers brushing hers. Thank you, Miss Hamilton, he said, his tone respectful but unguarded. I'll be in touch. He turned back to his toolbox, but Zora caught the faintest curve of a smile, a crack in his stoic facade. As Zora boarded the Stratohawk, her team bustling to prepare for Tokyo, she glanced back at the hangar. Julian was already gone, lost in the crowd of technicians, but his presence lingered in her mind. Claudia watched her from the sidelines, her expression unreadable. The jet's engines hummed, ready to carry Zora to a deal that could shape Apex's future. But as the hatch closed, she felt a shift, subtle but undeniable. Today wasn't just about saving a contract, it was the beginning of something new. A partnership, perhaps, forged in the heat of crisis. with a man whose skill had turned the impossible into reality. The Houston skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Apex Aerospace's executive suite, but Zora Hamilton's focus was elsewhere. 6 months had passed since the Stratohawk's near-disastrous grounding, and the memory of Julian Carter's steady hands lingered like a quiet promise. At 38, Zora stood as the unyielding black CEO of a $12 billion empire, her father's legacy pulsing through every decision. Yet the weight of that legacy was a constant pressure, amplified by her stepmother Claudia's venomous presence. Claudia's minority stake in Apex was a leash she tugged at every board meeting, her smile sharp as broken glass. Zora's desk was a battlefield of reports, but one caught her eye, a proposal from the maintenance division, stamped with Julian's name. His new protocols had slashed aircraft downtime by 40%, saving millions. She'd acted swiftly after the Tokyo deal, summoning Julian to her office. "Mr. Carter," she'd said, her voice warm but commanding, "Apex needs more than a mechanic. Senior maintenance director, $150,000 effective immediately. Can you handle it?" His nod had been resolute, his pale blue eyes meeting hers without flinching. Now as she reviewed his latest work, Zora felt a rare flicker of trust. Julian wasn't just competent, he was transformative. Across town, Julian Carter's life had reshaped itself in ways he hadn't dared dream. The $150,000 salary was a lifeline, pulling him from the edge of despair. His daughter, Lily, 19, was thriving at Stanford's engineering program, her tuition secured without the crushing debt that had haunted Julian's nights. Their old cramped apartment, a place of peeling pain and endless worry, was a memory. In its place stood a modest two-bedroom home in Houston's suburbs, its walls adorned with Lily's sketches and Julian's Navy commendations. Each morning he woke to the hum of possibility, a stability he hadn't known since his wife's death a decade ago. But stability came with shadows. At Apex, Julian's new role thrust him into the spotlight, and not all eyes were friendly. In the maintenance hangar, he noticed irregularities, components with wear patterns that didn't match Apex's rigorous schedules. A fuel filter was replaced too soon, and a turbine blade with subtle scoring. He documented each anomaly in a worn leather notebook, his instincts honed by years in Navy hangars, where oversight meant catastrophe. He hadn't shared his concerns yet, wary of accusing without proof, but the pattern gnawed at him like a distant alarm. Zora, too, sensed undercurrents. Claudia's boardroom barbs had grown bolder. "Zora, dear," she'd said at the last meeting, her voice honeyed venom, "your father built Apex on experience, not youthful exuberance. Perhaps we should revisit leadership priorities." The words landed like a slap, but Zora's face remained a mask of control. Claudia's allies, older board members loyal to her late husband's era, nodded subtly, their doubt a silent weapon. Zora knew Claudia craved control, her minority stake a stepping stone to a coup. But proving it was like grasping smoke. Julian's office, a small but orderly space in the maintenance wing, became Zora's refuge. She visited under the guise of reviewing reports, but their conversations stretched beyond technicalities. "Your new diagnostic system," she said one afternoon, leaning against his desk, "it's catching flaws our old methods missed. How'd you develop it?" Julian shrugged, his calloused fingers tapping a wrench. "Navy habit. You learn to feel a machine's pulse, not just read its numbers." Zora smiled, a rare softening of her guarded demeanor. "My father said something similar. He'd have liked you." Their rapport grew, a quiet alliance forged in shared precision. Julian admired Zora's resolve, her ability to command a room while deflecting Claudia's darts. Zora, in turn, saw in Julian a man who didn't flinch under pressure, whose loyalty was to the work, not the politics. Yet their ease was tested by Claudia's shadow. During a hangar inspection, she approached Julian, her perfume sharp as her gaze. "Mr. Carter, you're quite the asset," she said, her tone laced with calculation. "A man of your talents could go far with the right alliances." Julian's jaw tightened. "I'm here to fix jets, Miss Hamilton, not play games." Claudia's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened, marking him as an obstacle. That evening, Julian sat at his kitchen table. Lily's latest letter from Stanford opened before him. Her words, "Dad, I'm designing a propulsion model based on your Apex protocols," filled him with pride. But his thoughts drifted to the notebook. The irregularities weren't random. They felt deliberate, like footprints in the sand. He considered telling Zora, but without evidence, it was just a hunch. Instead, he resolved to dig deeper, cross-referencing maintenance logs against delivery records. Zora, meanwhile, faced her reckoning. In her office, she studied a photo of her father, his warm smile a reminder of the dream they'd shared. Aerospace innovation for all, not just the elite. Claudia's maneuvering threatened that vision, and Zora's youth, her blackness too, made every misstep a potential weapon against her. Julian's success was a bright spot, proof that she could build on her father's legacy. But as she prepared for the next board meeting, a report crossed her desk. A minor delay in a Stratahawk component delivery, flagged by Julian's team. The supplier's name, Nebula Dynamics, rang a bell. Nebula's CEO, Grayson Wells, was a rival who'd lost contracts to Apex and never hid his resentment. Zora's instincts flared. Was Claudia connected to Nebula? The thought was a spark in dry grass, but she needed more than suspicion. She texted Julian, "Meet me tomorrow, 7 a.m. Need your take on a supplier issue." As she set down her phone, the city lights beyond her window seemed to pulse with secrets. Claudia's game was escalating, and Zora sensed the stakes were higher than a boardroom power play. Julian, with his quiet strength and unerring instincts, was no longer just an employee. He was a partner, one she'd need to face the storm brewing on Apex's horizon. The Los Angeles sky burned orange as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Apex Aerospace's testing facility. Zora Hamilton stood on the observation deck, her silhouette sharp against the fading light, her dark eyes locked on the Stratahawk prototype, slicing through the air. The $90 million hypersonic jet was Apex's crown jewel, its sleek lines embodying her father's dream of revolutionizing space travel. Today's test flight was critical, a showcase for a $5 billion NASA contract that could cement Zora's legacy as the 38-year-old black CEO of a $12 billion empire. But the weight of that legacy felt heavier than ever, with her stepmother Claudia's veiled threats echoing in her mind. Inside the control room, Julian Carter, Apex's senior maintenance director, monitored the jet's telemetry with a hawk's intensity. 7 months ago, he'd been a struggling mechanic. Now his $150,000 salary and innovative protocols had made him indispensable. His pale blue eyes flicked across the screens, his calloused hands poised over a tablet. The irregularities he'd noted in his leather notebook, worn components, premature replacements, gnawed at him. He'd shared his concerns with Zora, but without proof, they were just shadows. Today, he prayed the Stratahawk would perform flawlessly. The jet banked gracefully, its engines a low roar, when a red alert flashed across the monitors. "Propulsion anomaly," the lead technician, Ramirez, barked, his voice tight. "Thrust output dropping. 10%, 15%. Zora's heart lurched as she rushed into the control room, her tailored blazer a stark contrast to the technician's coveralls. "What's happening?" she demanded, her voice steady but edged with dread. "Systems reading a fuel delivery fault," Ramirez said, fingers flying over the console. "But diagnostics show nothing. It's like the jet's choking." The pilot's voice crackled through the comms, calm but urgent. "Losing power. Requesting emergency landing clearance." Zora's mind raced. A failure now could tank the NASA deal and fuel Claudia's boardroom allies, who whispered she was too young, too inexperienced, too black to lead Apex. Julian's gaze narrowed. "This isn't mechanical wear," he muttered, his Navy-honed instincts screaming. "It's targeted." He turned to Zora. "I need to inspect the jet the moment it lands. Something's wrong. Deliberately wrong." Zora met his eyes, seeing the same resolve that had saved her Tokyo deal. "Do it," she said, her tone iron. Claudia, observing from a corner, arched an eyebrow, her crimson lips curling faintly. "Such drama," she murmured, but Zora ignored her focus on the jet's descent. The Stratahawk touched down with a screech, its landing rough but intact. Technicians swarmed the hangar, but Julian was already at the propulsion core, his toolbox open like a surgeon's kit. The air was thick with tension, the hangar's fluorescent lights casting harsh glints off the jet's silver skin. Zora stood nearby, arms crossed, her pulse hammering. Claudia lingered at the hangar's edge, her presence a silent taunt, as if she savored the chaos. Julian's flashlight pierced the core's labyrinth of titanium and carbon fiber. His fingers traced the fuel injector's control unit, a component he'd flagged in his notebook for inconsistent wear. There, he froze. A microchip, no larger than a dime, was spliced into the unit's wiring, its design alien to Apex's specs. His pulse quickened as he probed further, uncovering a subtle recalibration in the injector's software. It was designed to disrupt fuel flow under specific thrust conditions, invisible to standard diagnostics. Sabotage, he said, his voice low, meant only for Zora. She stepped closer, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Show me!" Julian pointed to the chip, its edges gleaming with precision. "This isn't a manufacturing flaw. Someone with deep knowledge of our systems planted it to cause intermittent failures, enough to ground the jet, not destroy it." He hesitated, then added, "The chip's calibration mimics my diagnostic signatures. Whoever did this wanted me to find it." Zora's breath caught. The NASA contract's timing, Claudia's recent boardroom maneuvers, and now this. It wasn't a coincidence. Her stepmother's ambition to seize Apex was no longer just a suspicion. It was a blade poised to strike. But why frame Julian's methods? To discredit him, her ally, or to send a message? "Who had access to the jet?" she asked, her voice cold. "Maintenance crew, suppliers, and select executives," Julian replied, his mind racing. "The chip's custom, high-end, not off the shelf. This took resources." Zora's eyes flicked to Claudia, who was now speaking softly to a board member, her demeanor too calm, too calculated. "Keep this quiet," Zora whispered. "Document everything. We're not just fixing a jet, we're hunting a traitor." Julian nodded, his jaw tight. He removed the chip with surgical care, rerouting the injector's wiring to restore function. The Stratohawk's engines hummed as he ran a test, diagnostics flashing green. The immediate crisis was averted, but the hangar felt like a battlefield, the air charged with unspoken accusations. Zora's mind churned. Claudia's allies on the board would exploit this failure, and a saboteur within Apex meant no one was above suspicion. As Julian packed his tools, Zora approached, her voice low. "This changes everything, Julian. Someone's playing a dangerous game, and you're in their crosshairs." He met her gaze, his expression unyielding. "I've faced worse in the Navy. Whoever did this, they're not as clever as they think." Zora's lips twitched, a fleeting acknowledgement of his resolve. "Good, because I need you now more than ever." Claudia's heels clicked as she approached, her smile a mask of concern. "Zora, darling, such a scare. Perhaps we should delay the NASA bid until we're certain of stability." Zora's eyes locked onto hers, a silent challenge. "Stability is exactly what we're ensuring, Claudia. Thanks to Mr. Carter." Claudia's gaze flickered to Julian, assessing, then back to Zora. "Of course," she purred, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. As Zora walked away, the Stratohawk loomed behind her, its restored hum a testament to Julian's skill and a warning of the battle ahead. The saboteur had struck, but they'd underestimated her. With Julian by her side, Zora felt a spark of defiance. This wasn't just about saving a jet or a contract. It was about protecting her father's dream and proving that no conspiracy could break her. The Houston night was thick with humidity, the city's skyline a constellation of steel and glass that seemed to pulse with secrets. Zora Hamilton sat in her office at Apex Aerospace, the glow of her monitor casting sharp shadows across her face. At 38, she was a fortress of resolve, her coiled hair pulled back, her dark eyes burning with purpose. The sabotage of the Stratohawk a week ago in Los Angeles had ignited a fire in her, a fire to protect her father's $12 billion empire from the venomous ambition of her stepmother, Claudia. The tampered microchip Julian Carter had found wasn't just a mechanical betrayal, it was a declaration of war. Zora's fingers hovered over her tablet, replaying Julian's words. "Whoever did this wanted me to find it." The chip's calibration, mimicking his diagnostic signatures, was a taunt, a puzzle meant to draw him and her into a larger game. Claudia's smug presence at the test site, her barbed comments about Zora's leadership, pointed to her involvement, but suspicion wasn't proof. Zora needed evidence, and she needed it fast. The $5 billion NASA contract hung in the balance, and Claudia's allies on the board were circling like vultures, ready to exploit any misstep. Julian Carter, now Apex's senior maintenance director, stood in the maintenance hangar, his leather notebook open under the harsh fluorescent lights. The irregularities he'd tracked for months, worn components, premature replacements, had culminated in the Stratohawk's near disaster. His pale blue eyes, weathered by Navy years, scanned the latest maintenance logs. A delivery from Nebula Dynamics, a rival firm, had included parts for the jet's propulsion system. Nebula's CEO, Grayson Wells, was a known adversary, his resentment of Apex's dominance palpable in every lost contract. Julian's gut churned. Was Nebula the source of the sabotage chip? He met Zora at dawn in her office, the city stirring beyond the windows. Nebula's parts were in the Stratohawk, he said, his voice low, steady. Their CEO, Grayson Wells, has motive. Money, pride, power. But the chip's sophistication suggests an inside job. Someone at Apex gave them access. Zora's jaw tightened, her mind flashing to Claudia's recent private meetings with board members. My stepmother's been too quiet since LA, she said, her tone cold. She's planning something, and I'd bet Nebula's involved. Julian leaned forward, his calloused hands gripping his notebook. We need to catch them in the act. Leak a fake report. Say we're installing a software update on the Stratohawk that'll leave it vulnerable. If they bite, we'll trace their move. Zora's eyes narrowed, assessing the risk. It was bold, almost reckless, but Julian's calm certainty anchored her. Do it, she said, but we keep this between us. No one else, not even the board. Zora's cybersecurity chief, Lena Patel, was brought into the fold under strict confidentiality. A wiry woman with a hacker's instincts, Lena crafted a decoy report detailing a critical software patch for the Stratohawk's navigation system, embedding traceable markers. Zora approved the leak, routing it through a supplier channel she suspected Claudia monitored. The trap was set, but the waiting was agony. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown to betrayal. 3 days later, the Stratohawk was scheduled for a routine test flight over Houston. Julian's team had installed a failsafe in the navigation system, a digital tripwire that would log any unauthorized access. In the control room, Zora stood beside Julian, her posture rigid, her heart a drumbeat of anticipation. The jet soared, its silver skin glinting against the morning sky, when Lena's monitor flashed red. Intrusion detected, she hissed, her fingers dancing over the keyboard. Someone's trying to override the navigation controls. Remote hack, high-end encryption? Julian's eyes flicked to Zora. They took the bait. Lena traced the signal, her screen a maze of code. It's bouncing through proxies, but I've got a lock. Servers tied to Nebula Dynamics. Zora's breath caught, triumph mingling with fury, but the hack was only half the puzzle. Simultaneously, an alert pinged from Apex's secure server, an unauthorized access attempt on the Stratohawk's design files. Lena's eyes widened. The intruders using executive credentials, board-level access. Zora's blood ran cold. Claudia, she whispered. Only a board member could access those files, and Claudia's recent consulting with suppliers made her the prime suspect. Lena confirmed the breach originated from Claudia's office terminal, her digital fingerprints unmistakable. She's downloading schematics, Lena said, her voice tight. She's feeding them to someone, likely Nebula. Julian's mind raced. The hack and the breach were coordinated, a two-pronged assault to destabilize Apex. They want the NASA contract, he said, his voice grim. Cripple the Stratohawk, steal the designs, and let Nebula swoop in. Zora nodded, her resolve hardening. We've got them, but we need to play this smart. Catch them red-handed, not just in code. She instructed Lena to let the breach continue, capturing every file Claudia accessed. The hack on the Stratohawk was neutralized by Julian's failsafe, and the jet landed safely. In the hangar, Julian inspected the navigation system, finding a secondary tampering attempt, a physical override device planted during a recent maintenance cycle. Sloppy, he muttered, removing it. They're getting desperate. That night, Zora and Julian met in a secure conference room, the city's lights a distant glow. Lena presented the evidence. Intercepted emails between Claudia and Grayson, detailing a plan to undermine Zora's leadership. Claudia would orchestrate a boardroom coup citing operational failures, while Grayson's Nebula would secure the NASA contract through stolen designs. One email chilled Zora. The girl's too green to lead. Apex needs a steady hand, mine. Claudia's words, typed with venom, were a betrayal laid bare. Zora's hands trembled, not with fear, but with rage. Her father's dream, accessible space travel for all, was under siege by the woman who'd claimed to love him. Julian's steady presence grounded her. "We've got enough to expose them," he said, his voice firm. "But Claudia's got bored allies. We need to strike at the right moment. Public, undeniable." Zora nodded, her mind sharpening. "The next board meeting, we'll invite Grayson, make him think we're open to a partnership. Then we drop the hammer." As they parted, Zora felt a shift in their bond. Julian wasn't just an ally. He was a partner who saw her not as a CEO, but as a warrior fighting for her father's vision. Julian, too, felt the weight of their mission. His daughter Lily was safe at Stanford, but Apex was now his fight, too. The notebook in his pocket, once a record of hunches, was now a weapon. Claudia and Grayson had underestimated them both, and that mistake would be their undoing. In her office, Zora stared at a photo of her father, his warm smile a beacon. "I won't let her destroy you," she whispered. The evidence was locked in a secure drive, the trap set. Claudia's ambition had blinded her, and Grayson's greed had led him into Zora's crosshairs. The boardroom would be a battlefield, and Zora was ready to fight. The boardroom of Apex Aerospace was a cathedral of power, its mahogany table gleaming under recessed lights, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing Houston's skyline like a battleground. Zora Hamilton stood at the head of the table, her tailored charcoal suit a stark contrast to the storm brewing within her. At 38, the black CEO of a $12 billion empire, she was a force forged in her father's legacy. But today, that legacy faced its greatest threat. The evidence of her stepmother, Claudia's, betrayal, collusion with Grayson Wells of Nebula Dynamics to sabotage the Stratohawk, burned in her mind like a lit fuse. This was no mere meeting, it was a reckoning. Zora's dark eyes scanned the room as board members filed in, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. Claudia sat near the far end, her crimson lipstick a slash of defiance, her smile as sharp as a blade. Her allies, silver-haired executives loyal to her late husband's era, whispered among themselves, their doubt in Zora's leadership a palpable weight. Julian Carter, Apex's senior maintenance director, stood by the door, his navy blazer crisp but his calloused hands betraying his mechanic's roots. His presence, quiet yet unyielding, was Zora's anchor. The evidence they'd gathered, intercepted emails, server logs, a recorded call, was locked in a secure drive, ready to dismantle Claudia's conspiracy. Grayson Wells entered last, his tailored suit and slick grin exuding arrogance. Zora had invited him under the guise of discussing a strategic partnership, a lure he'd swallowed without question. His firm, Nebula Dynamics, had lost millions to Apex's dominance, and his collusion with Claudia aimed to steal the $5 billion NASA contract. As he took a seat, his eyes flicked to Claudia, a fleeting glance that confirmed their alliance. Zora's pulse quickened, but her face remained a mask of control. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zora began, her voice clear and commanding, "thank you for attending this emergency meeting. Apex faces a critical moment, not just for our NASA bid, but for our integrity." The room stilled, her words slicing through the murmurs. Claudia's smile tightened, sensing a shift. Zora gestured to a projector, its screen blank but ominous. "We've uncovered a threat to our company, a deliberate attempt to undermine our operations and my leadership." Board member Harold Vance, a Claudia loyalist, leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "This sounds dramatic, Zora. What proof do you have?" Zora's gaze didn't waver. "Irrefutable proof," she said, nodding to Julian. He stepped forward, his tablet syncing with the projector. The screen flared to life, displaying a damning email chain between Claudia and Grayson. Gasps rippled through the room as the words materialized. The girl's too green to lead. Apex needs a steady hand. Mine. Claudia's own words, typed with venom, hung like a guillotine. Zora's voice was steel. Claudia Hamilton conspired with Grayson Wells to sabotage the Stratohawk, steal our designs, and force a boardroom coup. She clicked to the next slide. Server logs showing Claudia's unauthorized access to restricted schematics. These files were downloaded from her office terminal, sent to Nebula Dynamics. The room erupted in murmurs, board members shifting uncomfortably. Claudia's face paled, but she forced a laugh. This is absurd, Zora. A misunderstanding. Fabricated evidence. Grayson smirked, his arrogance unshaken. You're out of your depth, Ms. Hamilton, he said, his tone dripping with condescension. Apex needs a real leader, not a diversity hire playing CEO. The words were a slap, echoing Claudia's private taunts. Zora's fists clenched, but she held her ground, her father's memory fueling her resolve. Julian's eyes met hers, a silent reminder of their shared fight. She pressed on, clicking to a recorded call. Grayson's voice, smug and clear. Once the Stratohawk fails, NASA's mine. Claudia will handle the board. The boardroom fell silent, the weight of betrayal crushing the air. Vance's face reddened, his loyalty to Claudia crumbling. This is unacceptable, he stammered. Zora seized the moment. Unacceptable doesn't cover it, Harold. Claudia accessed our designs to aid a rival. Grayson orchestrated a hack on our jet, traced to Nebula's servers. They targeted Apex to destroy my father's vision. Claudia stood, her composure fracturing. This is a witch hunt, she spat, her voice shrill. I've served Apex for years. Your father trusted me. Zora's eyes blazed. He trusted you to honor his dream, not sell it to the highest bidder. She turned to the board. Claudia's actions violate her fiduciary duty. I move to strip her voting rights and pursue legal action. Board member Sarah Lynn, a neutral voice, nodded slowly. Seconded. Grayson's smirk vanished as the board's mood shifted. You can't prove intent, he snapped, rising. This is circumstantial. Zora's smile was icy. Circumstantial? Your server logs, your emails, your voice on tape? The FBI's already reviewing our evidence. Grayson's face drained of color, his bravado collapsing. Julian stepped closer, his presence a quiet threat. You underestimated her, he said, his voice low. And me. The board deliberated, their voices a tense hum. Claudia's allies tried to deflect, citing her long service. But the evidence was a tidal wave. Zora stood tall, her heart pounding, but her resolve unshaken. Julian's notebook, once a record of hunches, had become their sword, its pages fueling this moment. When the vote came, it was unanimous. Claudia's voting rights were revoked, her board seat frozen pending legal review. Grayson faced federal charges for industrial espionage, his firm teetering on ruin. As Claudia stormed out, her heels clicking like gunfire, she shot Zora a look of pure venom. This isn't over, she hissed. Zora met her gaze, unflinching. It is for you. Grayson followed, his defeat a shadow trailing him. The boardroom emptied, leaving Zora and Julian alone, the city's lights a silent witness. Zora exhaled, the weight of victory mingling with exhaustion. We did it, she said, her voice soft but fierce. Julian nodded, his blue eyes warm with respect. You did it. I just brought the proof. Zora's lips curved, a rare smile. Don't sell yourself short, Julian. You're more than proof. You're my partner in this. He held her gaze, the word partner resonating beyond the boardroom, a bond forged in crisis. The Stratohawk waited in its hangar, its silver skin a symbol of Apex's resilience. Zora's father's dream was safe, but the cost of betrayal lingered. As she left the boardroom, Julian at her side, Zora felt a fire kindled within her. Claudia and Grayson were defeated, but the NASA contract and her legacy still demanded her fight. Today, she'd proven her strength, and with Julian's quiet loyalty, she was ready for whatever came next. The grand ballroom of Houston's River Oaks Country Club shimmered under crystal chandeliers, a sea of elegance where Apex Aerospace's annual gala unfolded like a victory hymn. 3 months had passed since the boardroom showdown that dismantled Claudia's conspiracy. and Zora Hamilton stood at the pinnacle of her power. At 38, the black CEO of a $12 billion empire, she radiated unyielding grace in a sleek emerald gown, her coiled hair adorned with a subtle gold clasp. The gala celebrated Apex's crowning achievement, securing the $5 billion NASA contract, a testament to her father's dream of democratizing space travel. Yet beneath the clink of champagne flutes and murmured congratulations, Zora felt the weight of her journey, a path forged through betrayal and redeemed by trust. The Stratohawk, Apex's hypersonic marvel, was now the cornerstone of NASA's next-generation missions, its flawless test flights silencing doubters. Claudia, stripped of her board seat and wealth, had vanished into obscurity, her legal battles a fading echo. Grayson Wells, her co-conspirator, faced federal charges that crippled Nebula Dynamics, his once proud firm now a cautionary tale. Zora's victory was absolute, but it was not hers alone. Julian Carter, the mechanic-turned-ally who'd uncovered the sabotage, stood as her equal in this triumph, his quiet strength a beacon through the storm. Zora scanned the room, her dark eyes catching Julian across the crowd. He wore a tailored black suit, a far cry from his hangar coveralls, but his calloused hands and steady gaze were unmistakably his own. Beside him stood his daughter, Lily, 19, her Stanford engineering badge pinned proudly to her dress. Lily's presence was a reminder of Julian's stakes. His fight to secure her future had intertwined with Zora's battle for Apex. As their eyes met, Zora felt a surge of gratitude, a bond deeper than professional necessity. The gala's program began, and Zora took the stage, her voice resonating with quiet power. Apex stands today not because of one person, but because of trust. Trust in innovation, in resilience, and each other, she said, her words carrying the weight of her father's legacy. The Stratohawk is more than a jet, it's a promise to connect humanity to the stars. Applause thundered, but Zora's gaze sought Julian, a silent acknowledgement of his role in this moment. Offstage, she approached him, a sleek tablet in hand. Lily beamed, her enthusiasm infectious. Ms. Hamilton, Dad's been telling me about the Stratohawk's new propulsion tweaks. Mind-blowing, Zora smiled, warmth softening her usual reserve. Your father's a genius, Lily. Apex is lucky to have him. Julian shifted, unaccustomed to praise, but his eyes held a quiet pride. Julian, Zora said, her tone shifting to one of deliberate gravity. You've been more than a colleague. You saved Apex when it mattered most. She handed him the tablet, its screen displaying a contract. Vice President of Engineering Innovation, $300,000 stock options, and a board seat. Apex needs your vision, not just in the hangar, but at the helm. The room seemed to hush, the weight of her offer palpable. Julian's breath caught, the numbers staggering, more than he'd ever imagined in his Navy days or his lean years as a single father. Ms. Hamilton, Zora, he corrected, his voice low but firm. I don't know what to say. His fingers grazed the tablet, the reality sinking in. Lily's eyes widened, and she hugged him, whispering, Dad, you deserve this. Zora's smile was steady, her confidence in him unwavering. Say yes, Julian. You've earned it, and I trust you to help shape Apex's future. He nodded, his gratitude unspoken but etched in his expression. Yes, he said, the word a vow. The moment was electric, a culmination of their shared struggle. Julian's rise from a $150,000 director to a board-level executive mirrored Zora's ascent, proof that talent, not privilege, defined Apex's ethos. Lily, overcome, turned to Zora. Thank you for believing in him, she said, her voice thick with emotion. She hugged Zora, a spontaneous gesture that caught the CEO off guard, but warmed her heart. Your father believed in Apex, Zora replied softly. I'm just honoring that. As the gala continued, Zora and Julian moved through the crowd, their partnership a quiet force. Board members, once skeptical of Zora's youth, now sought her counsel, their respect hard-won. Julian, too, drew attention, his technical insights earning nods from NASA officials in attendance. The Stratohawk's success had elevated Apex to new heights, its innovations poised to redefine space exploration. Yet for Zora, the true triumph was personal, a reclamation of her father's vision from those who'd sought to tear it down. A quiet moment found them on a balcony overlooking the city, the night air cool against the gala's warmth. Houston's light stretched like a galaxy below, mirroring the stars above. Zora leaned against the railing, her gown catching the moonlight. 3 months ago, I thought Claudia would win, she admitted, her voice low, vulnerable. Her betrayal cut deeper than I expected. Julian stood beside her, his presence steady. She underestimated you, he said. So did Grayson. They didn't see what I saw, a leader who fights for what's right. Zora turned to him, her eyes searching his. And you, Julian, you fought for Apex when you didn't have to. Why? He paused, his gaze distant, then met hers. Because I know what it's like to be counted out. You gave me a chance. More than a job, a purpose. I owed you my best. The words hung between them, a testament to their bond, forged in crisis and tempered by trust. The gala's music drifted out, a soft jazz melody that softened the night's edges. Zora felt a shift, a clarity that had eluded her amid the chaos of leadership. Apex was secure, its future bright, but it was Julian's loyalty, his refusal to bow to doubt or deceit, that had made it possible. We're not done, she said, a spark in her voice. The NASA contract is just the beginning. I want Apex to inspire, to open doors for those who've been shut out. Julian nodded, his smile faint but genuine. I'm in, Zora, all the way. As they returned to the gala, the crowd parting for them like a tide, Zora felt her father's presence, a quiet pride in the daughter who'd defended his dream. Julian, too, carried his legacy, Lily's future, now boundless, a reflection of his sacrifice. The Stratohawk waited in its hangar, a symbol of their shared victory, its silver skin ready to pierce the heavens. Tonight, Apex wasn't just a company, it was a promise kept, a transformation born from the ashes of betrayal. The Houston dawn painted the sky in hues of amber and rose, a quiet prelude to the hum of Apex Aerospace's headquarters. Zora Hamilton stood in her corner office, the glass walls framing a city that pulsed with ambition. At 38, the Black CEO of a $12 billion empire, she was no longer just her father's daughter. She was the architect of a future where space travel was not a privilege, but a possibility for all. The Stratohawk's triumph in securing the $5 billion NASA contract had silenced her doubters. But it was the battle against her stepmother, Claudia's, betrayal that had forged Zora's resolve into something unbreakable. Now, as she gazed at a framed photo of her father, Dr. Isaiah Hamilton, his warm smile seemed to nod in approval, a silent vow that his dream was safe in her hands. Julian Carter, now Vice President of Engineering Innovation, stood on the tarmac outside Apex primary hangar, the Stratohawk gleaming behind him like a silver sentinel. 9 months ago, he'd been a struggling mechanic, his life tethered to a $43 bank balance and an eviction notice. Today, his $300,000 salary and board seat were markers of a transformation he'd never imagined. His daughter Lily thrived at Stanford, her engineering designs inspired by Apex's innovations. Yet Julian's pride lay not in titles, but in the partnership he'd built with Zora, a bond that had weathered sabotage, deceit, and the weight of a legacy under siege. The hangar buzzed with activity, technicians preparing the Stratohawk for a ceremonial NASA test flight. Julian's latest project, a predictive maintenance system, was integrated into the jet, reducing downtime risks by 60%. It was his brainchild, born from Navy-honed instincts and refined by Apex's cutting-edge resources. As he reviewed telemetry data on his tablet, Zora approached, her presence commanding even in casual slacks and a blazer. "Ready for the big show?" she asked, her voice warm but edged with the intensity of a leader who'd fought for this moment. Julian nodded, his pale blue eyes meeting hers. "The system's flawless. NASA's team will see what Apex can do." He paused, a faint smile breaking his stoic demeanor. "What your father dreamed of." Zora's expression softened, a rare vulnerability flickering. "He'd have loved this," she said, her gaze drifting to the jet. "But he'd have loved you, too. Someone who fixes more than machines." The words hung between them, a testament to a partnership that transcended titles, rooted in mutual respect and shared defiance. Their victory over Claudia and Grayson Wells was a wound still healing. Claudia, stripped of her wealth and influence, faced ongoing legal battles, her name erased from Apex's history. Grayson's Nebula Dynamics had collapsed under federal indictments, his sabotage of the Stratohawk a fatal misstep. Yet the scars of their betrayal lingered. Zora had once trusted Claudia, seen her as family only to uncover a viper's ambition. Julian, too, had felt the sting of being targeted, the sabotage chip designed to exploit his diagnostic signatures. Together, they'd turned betrayal into triumph, but the cost had been a lesson in vigilance. Zora's latest initiative was a bold step to honor her father's vision. In a quiet boardroom meeting earlier that week, she'd proposed the Isaiah Hamilton Scholarship, a $50 million endowment to fund underrepresented students in aerospace engineering. Julian had been the first to back it, his voice steady as he addressed the board. This isn't charity, it's investment in talent, like Zora's father believed in. The board, now purged of Claudia's allies, approved it unanimously, a rare moment of unity that felt like a new beginning. Today's test flight was more than a NASA milestone. It was a stage to announce the scholarship, with media and industry leaders in attendance. Zora and Julian stood side by side as the Stratohawk taxied onto the runway, its engines a low roar that vibrated through the tarmac. The crowd, NASA officials, board members, and Lily, visiting from Stanford, watched in anticipation. Lily's presence was a quiet joy for Julian, her pride in her father's ascent from hangar to boardroom, a mirror to Zora's journey. As the jet soared, a silver streak against the dawn, Zora took the podium, her voice carrying over the crowd. Apex Aerospace is more than innovation. It's opportunity, she said, her words fierce yet hopeful. Today we launch the Isaiah Hamilton Scholarship, ensuring that talent, not circumstance, shapes the future of space. Applause erupted, cameras flashing, but Zora's eyes found Julian, a silent thank you for his unwavering support. Lily clapped hardest, her grin wide, whispering to a NASA official, "That's my dad's boss," and his partner. The Stratohawk's flight was flawless, its telemetry data streaming perfect metrics thanks to Julian's system. NASA's lead engineer, Dr. Chen, approached Zora, his expression one of rare awe. "Your jet's a game changer, Ms. Hamilton. And that scholarship? It's what this industry needs." Zora nodded, her pride tempered by humility. "It's what my father wanted, a sky open to everyone." Later in the hangar, Zora and Julian stood alone. The Stratohawk, resting like a warrior, returned from battle. The crowd had dispersed, leaving only the hum of machinery and the weight of their shared victory. Zora traced the jet's silver skin, her fingers lingering. "I was afraid," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid Claudia would take this from me, from him." Julian's gaze was steady, his Navy discipline grounding her. "She never stood a chance. Not against you." Zora turned, her dark eyes searching his. "Not against us," she corrected. "You saw what I couldn't, Julian. Patterns, risks, possibilities. Apex is stronger because of you." He shifted, unaccustomed to such direct praise, but his voice was firm. "You gave me a shot when I was just a name on a resume. I'd fight for Apex, for you, any day." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a vow, a partnership that had reshaped their lives. As they walked back to the headquarters, the rising sun cast long shadows, their silhouettes blending against the tarmac. Zora felt her father's presence, not as a ghost but as a spark within her, fueling her drive to build beyond his dreams. Julian, too, carried a legacy, Lily's future, now limitless, and a role at Apex that honored his skill and sacrifice. The scholarship was their first step, but Zora's vision stretched further. New designs, new horizons, a world where no one was left behind. The Stratohawk loomed behind them, its silver skin a promise kept. Claudia's betrayal, Grayson's greed, they were ashes now, scattered by Zora's resilience and Julian's loyalty. Apex was not just a company, it was a beacon, a legacy secured through trust and tenacity. As they stepped into the headquarters, the dawn breaking wide, Zora and Julian carried the stars within them, ready to light the way for those who would follow. What an incredible journey was Zora and Julian, turning betrayal into triumph to secure Apex's legacy. What did you think of their story? Would you stand firm like Zora or uncover truths like Julian? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. A huge thank you for joining us on this thrilling ride. Your support fuels our storytelling, so hit that subscribe button to catch our next epic tale. Until then, keep dreaming big and stay inspired. See you soon.